The New Jim Crow. This is a book review of the book The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander, published 2010, The New Press. The book, The New Jim Crow, offers an unflinching look at the U.S. addiction to imprisonment and comes up with a startling diagnosis. American corporate greed, political opportunism, and age-old hatreds and fears have congealed to create a monstrous explosion in the world's largest prison industrial complex. Further, the author, a law professor at Ohio State University's Moritz College of Law, Michelle Alexander, digs deep into U.S. history and deeper still into U.S. criminal law and practice to conclude that the barbarous system of repression and control known popularly as Jim Crow had a rebirth in this era. That's why she calls it the new Jim Crow. This system of discrimination came into being much as the first one did. After the rout of the South by the Civil War, millions of newly freed Africans exercised these new rights under Reconstruction. But this period was short-lived, and as soon as possible, states passed harsh laws known as black codes, which criminalized behavior by blacks and exposed them to the repression of Southern prisons, where convicts were leased out to labor for others. It was a rebirth of slavery by other means. This present era began at the height of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, when millions of blacks fought for their rights denied for more than a century. Alexander concludes that this new system, this new coalescence of white economic and political interests, targeted blacks, especially those engaged in the drug industry, as the human capital with which to provide construction, prison staff, and other appendages of the prison industrial complex. But perhaps Alexander's most salient point is her finding that America's black population constitutes a racial caste that feeds and perpetuates mass incarceration. Indeed, every other societal structure supports this superstructure, from broken schools to deindustrialization to population concentration in isolated urban ghettos, to the violence of police, to the silence of the black middle class. One might argue that such a claim seems unsustainable when we see a black president, hundreds of black political figures, and those in entertainment or sports. But Alexander explains that every system allows exceptions, for they serve to legitimize the system and mask its ugliness and its gross effects. For example, while it's well known that apartheid was an overtly racist system, it allowed Asian and even African-American diplomats to live and work in such a regime by the political expedient of identifying them as honorary whites. When comparing both systems, Alexander argues that the U.S. imprisons more blacks, both in raw numbers and per capita, than South Africa at apartheid's height. From death row, this is MUMIA, Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.